The poem Ghanashyam by Kamala was published in 1977. Ghanashyam is the other name of Lord Krishna. As a boy and as a young man, Lord Krishna used to play with girls, all of whom adored him, and who used to feel delighted and thrilled by the sweet strains of music which he could produce from his favorite musical instrument, the flute. In course of time, stories became current that a girl by the name of Radha had fallen deeply in love with him. And centuries later, a woman by the name Meera Bai fell in love with him, though she could love him only in her imagination. Mirabai composed a large number of poems and songs in celebration of her love for him. It is against this background that Kamala Das, after having felt frustrated by the failure of her marriage and then by the total unsatisfactoriness of her many sexual relationships with men, sublimated her sexual desire by visualizing herself as a seeker of Lord Krishna's love. The poem is addressed to Ghanashyam, and the persona is, of course, Kamala Das herself. She tells Ghanashyam that he has built a nest in the garden of her heart, and that her life, which was till now a silent and sleeping jungle, is now stirring with sounds of music. Ghanashyam, she says, has been leading her along a route which she had never known before, and that every time when she is about to come close to him, he simply disappears. She goes on to say that life is moisture, that life is water, that life is semen and blood, and that death is a want of moisture and water, that death is the hot sand bath, and that death is the last sob of the relative of the person who lies dead. She then says that she is using words to weave a garment for her Ghanashyam and that she is composing songs to produce music which would have the power to make the oceans dance. Continuing her address to Ghanashyam, Kamala Das describes her married life, which was a failure because her husband wanted merely to satisfy his lust and was unable to give her any love or affection in any real sense. She had found that only way in which she could survive was to reconcile her to her desolation and her loneliness. She has been trying to imagine that whenever her husband indulged in the sexual act with her, it was he, Ghanashyam, who was making love to her. She consoles herself that the thought of Ghanashyam appears to her in many shapes because he has many names. When any other man besides her husband makes love to her, she thinks that it is Ghanashyam making love to her. Kamala Das says that she seeks peace so that wisdom can come to her imperceptibly and silently. Ghanashyam has, like a fisherman, cast his net in the depths of her mind, and her thoughts are rushing towards him, like a fish which briskly enters the fisherman's net under some mysterious urge. This poem reveals to us Kamala Das's spiritual longings, which have been dormant in her and which have come to the surface as a consequence of her sexual frustrations. At first, she kept thinking that every man with whom she performed the sexual act was Ghanashyam in disguise. Then she began to feel confused as to the real identity of the men with whom she performed the sexual act. Next, she felt disillusioned about those casual lovers of hers. Finally, she feels cleansed of the desires of the flesh and wants only Ghanashyam as her lover. These are the stages by which Kamala Das sublimated her sensuality.